To support this show and all of the shows within TWiB Nation, consider becoming a subscriber of our paid service, The TWiBularity, at twib.me/subscribe. That's twib.me/subscribe. Or you can give a one-time donation at donate.twib.me. That's donate.twib.me. We've all learned how important media is and who tells our stories. Help us be the media that you want to hear and that the media is afraid to hear. It's kind of hard to listen to yourself become irrelevant.
Good afternoon. Today is Wednesday, January 21st, and today on TWiB Prime, the DOJ is not going to file charges against Darren Wilson for the killing of Michael Brown. This country is all too quick to see black children as criminals, and 2 GOP congresswomen have withdrawn their support for a bill that would ban abortion at 20 weeks. All this and more with Team Blackness on TWiB Prime.
So from now on, whenever you hear these horns, just know you are now entering the blackness. Collard greens, cornbread, and the catfish. Malcolm X and Dr. King with a black fist. We are live, son. This is blackness. You are now entering the blackness. Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye, and the classics. Real love, the opposite of ratchet. We are live, son. This is blackness. When they hear me, they say, let's go to
What is going on, people? We are back. This is This Week in Blackness Prime. I am your host, Elon James White. With me, as per usual, is Team Blackness, consisting of Captain, Lieutenant, General, Professor. On occasion, he is some sort of doctor. He is the Negro Jon Snow. In our Negro Game of Thrones, we have Aaron Rand Freeman, sir.
What was that stutter? Aaron Rand Freeman. It should roll off the tongue. It's been years.
There was something about it. Like, for some reason, I just was like, who is this guy again?
If you figure you're just spicing it up, maybe you call me Rand Freeman.
I'm just, I think it's the fact that I was thrown by your dreadlocks. Now that I found out that Negroes with dreadlocks are problematic, but from Anthony Mackie, I looked at the screen, I was a little bit nervous. I almost grabbed my wallet.
The criminal denotation helmets they are. So just in case you want to know where a criminal's at, they are frequently wearing helmets made out of their own hair. It's pretty gross, but really helpful when you want to find a criminal.
Yeah, well, now we know, and knowing is half the battle. Also with us, we have senior legal analyst here at TWiB Nation. She's angry, she's black, she's some sort of lady. She's the founder of the Angry Black Ladies Chronicles, and an overall problem and a half. We have Imani Gandy, ma'am.
I'm irritated.
Oh no, what happened?
Some jackass just before we went on air responded to some 2-week-old tweet where after the Oscar nominations came out, and I said, what, no love for Ava? And he responds with a link to IMDb that has, you know how they'll have continuity errors or trivia. There's a few continuity errors, one of which is oh, you can see a cell tower in the backdrop of one of the scenes, or in one of the scenes he's at a diner and there's a bottle of Fiji water. And this guy's going spamming everyone saying quit making it about race. She's not entitled to it because there were a couple of continuity errors. Really, bro? Really?
Stop.
Just stop.
What? Continuity errors meaning what?
Meaning for example, there wouldn't have been Fiji water in 1965. So in a shot, apparently you can see a bottle of Fiji water off in the distance, just tiny little things. Pretty much all movies have these little goofs. And
right.
if you go onto IMDb,
it's kind of like a gag. It's people talk about it all the time. How there's you can literally, there are whole websites devoted to random little things that you wouldn't notice in a movie. Yes.
Right. And so this person is trying to make the argument that because there were a few continuity errors or a couple of goofs, that she didn't deserve to be nominated for an Oscar.
That's illogical.
It's absolutely illogical.
I need people to fall down. Fall back. Actually both. Can we do it?
Fall back and then fall down.
Fall back, fall down.
And then drown yourself in a puddle.
Okay, why must you always go to murder?
I'm not saying murder. If you drown yourself in a puddle,
suicide. You're wishing suicide on someone, madam.
It's not suicide either. It's just an inability to get out of the puddle.
Exactly. It's more like an unfortunate accident.
Yeah, it's
you fell in a puddle and you can't get out. That sucks.
He wanted to get out, but he was too busy thrashing, and it just didn't work out for him.
Yeah.
Are you guys going to try to make me believe that that's literally not what you're saying in any shape, form, or fashion? But yet you want to be do I just have duh on my face?
A little bit.
You know what? That is rude as all get out. We do this Monday through Thursday. We have a docket full of nonsense, tomfoolery, shenanigans, and hootenannies. I don't know why hootenannies. It just sounded right. But we're gonna hit our quick hits right now. Ms. Gandy.
So speaking of Selma, as we just were, an Alabama school superintendent has banned the high school history club from seeing the movie.
You can't do. Is that even legal?
I mean, there was a school trip to see the movie that was planned, and by the high school history club, and it was canceled by the DeKalb County School Superintendent Hugh Taylor. DeKalb County is in Georgia. For those of you who are not familiar with the counties of Georgia. Apparently, the superintendent had concerns over obscene language and racial profanity.
Are you kidding me? It's Selma.
Yeah.
It's being hailed as one of the greatest American movies of our time, and timely and important, and you're like, I'm uncomfortable with the language? Are you kidding me?
Right. Well, it's like the same people who banned like what, To Kill a Mockingbird because it has the N-word in it. I mean, people are, or Tom Sawyer. I know a lot of schools ban. Is it Tom Sawyer or Huck Finn? Maybe both.
I think it's Huck Finn.
Huck Finn because of racially charged language. I mean, it's not like you're reading some KKK propaganda where they're just throwing out racial slurs and there's no context behind it. When you're reading books like Huck Finn, or if you're watching movies like Selma, there's context behind it. It's not just willy-nilly. I don't like people.
Here's the thing about this, Monty, and I think this is the part that we just have to sometimes just really accept. We as a society, as a nation, really are not fans of our own history. Specifically our own history. We don't like it. We would prefer to not really ever talk about it, except for the parts that we think are awesome, like founding fathers and fighting against the British and stuff like that. That we love to talk about, and then anything that can make America look good. But a lot of the other 78% of our history that isn't so magical and wonderful and full of fairy dust and I don't know, shooting stars, we don't want to talk about that. And when you kind of like point that out and like kind of highlight that, it's immediately rejected by large swaths of our nation. And the idea that a history club couldn't go see Selma is insulting, in all honesty.
It is. It absolutely is. And you're absolutely right. I mean, we're in love with like World War II movies. You know, we're in love with the American Revolution and the Boston Tea Party. But when it comes to America's really disgusting history of imperialism, racism, sexism, pretty much every other kind of bad-ism you can think of, it's like, we don't really want to talk about that. And then you have certain school districts like in Texas where they're just rewriting history. They're writing that history out so that students won't even learn it. So you're going to get a whole generation of students who are like, slavery wasn't so bad. You got a hot meal and a roof over your head. What's the big whoop? No. Don't like it.
I'm not a fan of it. What else we got?
So the Australian Open is happening now, essentially. And there's a male interviewer who apparently is asking women to give him a twirl when he's interviewing them, which is a little bit odd. There's a woman, Kiki Bertens. It's also happened to Serena Williams when she won the other day. But this woman, 20-year-old Canadian tennis star Kiki Bertens, she won the third round of the Australian Open. And when she was being interviewed on court by this dude named Eugenie Bouchard, he asked her to twirl for him. And she was like, she said, a twirl? And he said, a twirl, like a pirouette. And so she twirled for him uncomfortably.
Wow, she did it? She did it. She didn't throw a middle finger off?
No, she didn't. She did it. She was kind of like, okay, she did it. And then said, that was weird.
What? And I assume he was not asking the gentleman to do these twirls.
No.
Whether or not were there male games happening at the same time?
I don't think so, but I don't think that he would be asking men to twirl them when we get to the men's portion of that. I'm not sure why people still think it's cool to do that, especially in high stakes, high environments like that. Why would you feel it necessary to gender your interview? Right.
Right. You're gendering your interview. Like you're talking to people who are some of the best athletes in the world. They're like, all right, turn around for me, girl.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me show me what you're working with. What them hips do.
So tacky.
That's pretty bad, right?
Yeah, it's terrible.
Like I can't imagine doing that. Like I've actually gotten in trouble for the exact opposite, for not gendering women. Like talking to like exactly. I had someone, I'm not gonna call them out, Eljoy, who got mad at me one time because I was not treating her like a woman, like a girl or a woman. Aaron, hey, you've seen this before.
I mean, where she kind of gets a little annoyed that you treat her like you're a sister.
A sister or just other person.
other human being. Yeah,
Right.
It's just that's not very gendered at all.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that, and I think it's because like my mom was like just very, very hardcore about that. Like she didn't want she didn't treat me any differently because I was a boy. Because when she was a kid, she got treated differently all the time. Like my grandfather used to have her like do like dumb things, like like we'll have to wash the dishes after dinner, and my uncle didn't have to do that at all. And it was like, oh, because you're a girl. And it's like that doesn't make sense. My mom, even as a kid, was like, why? That doesn't make sense. And so that was instilled in her. And so when I came into the world, the first thing, like my mom was like, nope, none of that. No, first of all, you know what else you're gonna do? Your laundry. I don't care if you're 9, go do your laundry. And like you will not be just expecting some woman to come around and do stuff. But at the same time, as she forced me to go do my laundry and learn how to cook and take care of myself, I also was allowed to cry. No. So I feel as if like it was a nice little trade off on that. But like that guy should fall down, and I'm surprised that more people aren't freaking out at him.
Yeah, we don't like him. We don't like him at all.
We definitely don't like him.
No, not so much.
What else we got?
So this is actually kind of amusing simply because of the names of the people involved. So there's been a top-selling Christian book called The Boy Who Came Back from Heaven. And it was written by a 9-year-old kid and his father. And it retells the story of this kid who died and went to heaven, apparently. The book was a bestseller. It sold like 112,000 copies in like the first week or something. Christians, they all loved it. Well, it turns out that this kid did not die and did not go to heaven. And so bookstores have pulled this book off of the shelves. And he is quoted as saying, "I said I went to heaven because I thought it would get me attention. When I made the claims that I did, I had never read the Bible. People have profited from lies and continue to. They should read the Bible, which is enough. The Bible is the only source of truth. Anything written by man cannot be infallible." Now, here's why it's amusing. The kid's name, Alex Malarkey. Malarkey. He wrote a bunch of malarkey, and his name is Malarkey.
Well, that's about right.
Yeah. So, apparently he was he was in a car accident in 2006. He was 6 years old at the time of the accident, was paralyzed as a result of his injuries.
Which is terrible.
Which is awful. But I think from what I understand, it seems like he and his father, the father was sort of more of the impetus behind this book, behind sort of convincing this kid that, oh yeah, you died and went to heaven, and so we should write this book about your experiences. And apparently his mother was not too happy about the publication of this book, and so I guess is relieved now that the kid has finally broken his silence and said, yeah, that didn't happen. Read the Bible. Don't listen. The only truth is in the Bible, not in books written by people named Malarkey.
What I'm annoyed by in this whole story is that people are upset about the kid who said he died and went to heaven and came back, and they're upset.
Right.
Did you really think the kid died and came back? Do you really think that he has that full on? I don't even have like a lot of sympathy for the people who are like, oh my God, this is such an amazing story, and they're like, I am hurt that you lied to us. Yeah. I don't go along with people saying they died and went to another plane of existence. Nope. That's like me saying that when I go away for a couple of days, I'm like, hey guys, I was traveling with the doctor, and then I write a book about how my travels with the doctor when we go into through space and time, and then at some point I go, guys, I actually didn't travel with the doctor,
and everyone's like, oh, shocking.
Like, if you're shocked, yeah. What else we got?
University of Oregon suspended a couple of football players for failing their marijuana tests. And just days later, the NCAA has announced that it plans to re-examine its approach to testing for recreational drug use.
As they should. A release published on the NCAA website
said that the organization's Committee on Competitive Safeguards and Medical Aspects of Sports recommended extensive changes to the NCAA drug testing policies when it convened in mid-December in Indianapolis. Among those changes are increased testing and preventive efforts for performance-enhancing drugs, and a new model for prevention of recreational drug use that focuses on educational programs instead of a traditional testing model. And what's interesting about the NCAA's the testing model that they're trying to change is that it's actually more strict than the NFL, than like the NBA and pilots. Like the testing levels, like if you are being tested for marijuana, the levels at which you can be subject to some sort of sanction are less than what it is for like Denzel Washington in Flight. They're more strict. So
I don't understand. I'm just one of those people who just doesn't understand like the rigmarole around all of this in the first place. I think it's kind of silly, and especially like you're testing like especially around things like marijuana and stuff like that. Like, do you really think that marijuana is going to give them a boost?
Right,
exactly. So it's not that it's a performance enhancing drug that they're just so amazing at the sport now because they're high. Because most likely they probably don't want to do it high. I know.
It'd be slow.
It'd be very slow. Like all of a sudden your reflexes are gone. So that's one thing. And then two, what do you like? If the person is making their grades, they're doing their work, and then they go play sports, then they do their extracurricular activity. What is your concern on this?
Right. Especially, as we've said so many times in the show, when the amount of binge drinking that goes on at some of these colleges is out of hand. And you don't see anyone talking about, oh, we need to crack down on alcohol because, I mean, are we going to have to get into some conspiracy Fox News stuff about the alcohol lobby? Did you ever see that movie, Thank You for Smoking?
I did not see it, but I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's got to be something going on to where, the beverage companies are able to skirt any sort of examination about how alcohol is damaging to people, but yet there's no corresponding like marijuana lobby. There's no like big weed that's...
Give it time.
Yeah,
at the moment, that's what we're actually watching, which is actually also problematic because we're actually seeing the birth of big weed as we speak right now, like big marijuana. So people are like leaving very lucrative jobs and they're starting different types of programs. They're looking into apps and growth spaces and devices and things like that. And people are like opening dispensaries and people are making money on marijuana as much as they can, but at the same time, people are doing what young black folks have been doing for years and were being put in prison on a regular basis, having their lives basically ruined. But now it's considered American industry in certain spaces. Now, please know, some folks are still out there and very angry at the concept of marijuana, i.e., that lady from HLN. When Nancy Grace, I need, like, she should so fall down. But so there are people like that, but there are other people who are now like really investing, and this is an industry that's going to be booming and growing. I don't think that we're going to all of a sudden hit a wall and we're going to all of a sudden turn everything backwards and make it and actually make it less accessible. I think it's only going to become more accessible. The federal government isn't actively enforcing any crackdowns on it anymore, so we're watching this space boom. And there will be lobbyists. There will at some point. There's I'm for all we know, there are lobbyists currently right now. Like I don't know everyone who's down there in Washington yelling at senators for stuff. I don't know, but watch, it's happening. And
Willie Nelson and Cheech Marin.
Yeah, who knows? And all I'm going to say is that as we're watching this, I really, especially in states as it becomes like legal and stuff like that, I'm like, do you have people in jail right now for marijuana possession or marijuana selling and stuff like that? Are you really going to keep them there? Is this even a reasonable thing to do? I'd argue not.
I say no.
Do we have how much more time do we have on Quick Hits? Excellent. Let's drop another story on that.
So apparently, there. I think this is just kind of silly, but the New York Times ran an article called "43 Questions to Ask Before Picking a New Town," and it's probably the whitest article I've ever read. But it talks about, when it comes time to move to the suburbs, there's a checklist that you should go through to figure out. Emily, I'm going to cut you. There's a checklist that you should go down to figure out whether or not you're going to be happy in this new town. So you're supposed to ask about what the school test scores are in the neighborhood, how far your commute is. You're supposed to ask stuff about, you're supposed to go to the school that you think your child is going to attend and just hang out to see what kind of parents are coming out of the school or are dropping their kids off. Are the parents wearing yoga pants? Are the parents wearing power suits? Are you a yoga pants wearer? And are you going to feel uncomfortable sending your kid to a school with a bunch of parents that are wearing power suits? In the summer, does the rest of the neighborhood go to the Hamptons while you're stuck in your house because you can't afford to go to the Hamptons? I mean, these are all questions that there's a woman by the name of Allison Bernstein has built a business called Suburban Jungle that guides people to places within commuting distance of New York City that suit them best. And these are some of the questions that you're supposed to ask.
And actually, the thing that I think we should really point out was they specifically said that these are things that you ask because you can't ask about race. They literally said because you can't ask about this. I was like, huh.
So you ask around it.
You ask around. You try to ask all the signifiers of race, things that would actually affect. Basically, it's looking for signifiers of race and or class.
Right.
And it's like I don't know about this.
They're like,
thing
there's a Popeye's chicken on every corner. I don't think we want to move here.
Actually, the fact is that they would totally move there. Some folks would totally move there, and then once they get there, they go like, I'm really uncomfortable with the Popeyes that are around here, and I really think that we should sit down and talk. Like, also, there's a drum circle that is really keeping me up at night, and I'm really uncomfortable with how loud it is. Can we do something? By the way, for long-time listeners, you know that I'm actually mimicking what actually happened in Harlem when there was the drum circle. I think it had been there 40 years, 40, 50 years, have been a part of the fabric, and gentrifiers came in and was like, I don't like this anymore. It's a problem and a half, and I do find it hilarious that list and the idea that they didn't even think that maybe this could be looked at as weird or problematic, or they did, and they were just like, listen, man, I'm just keeping it real.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm worried about the coloreds and the poor folk.
The coloreds.
Well, I mean, and also the colored poor folk.
Ooh, they're the worst.
Ooh, that's like a combo. That's like the Wonder Twins activate. I mean, come on.
Not good.
Not good. All right. We're gonna hit our main docket here today. Our lead story actually. It was reported by the New York Times that apparently they have a source that says that the DOJ seems to be planning to release a memo stating that there will not be civil rights charges charged against Darren Wilson, Officer Darren Wilson. I mean, actually, but no, he's no longer a cop now. Ex-Officer Darren Wilson in the shooting of Michael Brown. This is obviously has caused a bit of feelings, if you will. I think that's as clear as I possibly can say. That's a consternation, annoyance, frustration, because this was one of the things that people were promising and talking about when we first heard about the lack of an indictment on Darren Wilson. The idea was that there was still a investigation opened by the DOJ, so it wasn't going to just be nothing. We're still going to be able to possibly see some sort of action happen here. And then all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, now we're seeing that apparently, according to the New York Times source, which I'm assuming they wouldn't go throwing this out there if it wasn't a pretty damn strong source, this is not going to occur. Imani?
Yeah, I have to say I'm not surprised by this at all. And I actually wrote an article for RH Reality Check a couple of months ago that talked about why it is that people sort of generally tend to look at the announcement that a DOJ investigation has been opened up. They look at these announcements and they're very excited because they think, well, we didn't get justice at the state level, but there's still the federal government. The federal government may swoop in and provide us justice. But the federal government it's very difficult for the federal government to provide specific justice in specific cases. So the problem is that a lot of people want justice for Mike Brown, and they're not going to get justice for Mike Brown, but what they might get is justice for future Mike Browns. So to the extent that this leaked memo is accurate, the DOJ is not going to file federal charges against Darren Wilson, but the investigation into discriminatory practices in Ferguson is still open. And it's that investigation that it's the so-called pattern and practice investigation that may lead to the sort of reforms that we saw in Los Angeles after the Rampart scandal, and in Pittsburgh, and in Cleveland right now. Cleveland is probably going to enter into a consent decree with the Department of Justice based on the Department of Justice finding that there was a pattern and practice of basically racial fuckery going on at the Cleveland Police Department. So I understand people's frustration, but just from a legal standpoint, there's really not much that the federal government can do. And I'll explain to you specifically why. So if the federal government was going to file charges against Darren Wilson, they would be filing charges under a particular section of the United States Code. It's Title 18, Section 242. It's called deprivation of rights under color of law. That statute, or a portion of that statute, says whoever under color of any law subjects any person in any state, territory, commonwealth, etc., to the deprivation of any rights, privileges, or immunities secured or protected by the Constitution shall be fined or imprisoned, blah, blah, blah. So that means the willfully subjects is really where the rub is. What that means is that federal prosecutor would have to be able to prove that Darren Wilson intentionally shot Mike Brown with the intent to kill him or otherwise deprive him of his civil rights. Same with Eric Garner. The federal prosecutor would have to prove that the cop who killed Eric Garner did so intentionally. And it's really, really hard to prove intent, especially when you have inevitable testimony from the cop that says, I didn't do it on purpose, as the Eric Garner cop, I believe, testified. It was an accident. Or with Darren Wilson, I was defending myself, he was a threat, etc. It's very, very hard to prove intent unless you have some egregious piece of evidence like the Rodney King tape. So on the Rodney King tape, you see, police officers beating the crap out of Rodney King to such a degree that it would really be impossible to argue that it was an accident. And so that's why the federal prosecutor was able to get convictions on several of the cops that beat Rodney King. So I understand why people are frustrated. But the bright side of this is that hopefully it will lead to police reforms and that we can prevent future Black people and other people from being gunned down by the police like dogs in the street.
And that's the big thing here. I think, and it's the part that really doesn't make you feel better, because it is exactly what a lot of people have been saying before. How can we expect justice from a system that was not built for us? Mm-hmm. And so what you're seeing here is actually you're seeing a structural failure within the system overall. And so as we've been watching and paying close attention to Ferguson and what was happening down there, and the hopes and prayers. And please note, I still argue that it's not quite over there. Like the DOJ might not do it, but there's still a possibility if there was any type of humanity in some of these folks that they could actually still appoint a special prosecutor, because McCullough showed himself to be what's the word? I mean, because we're a serious news show, Imani, so we can't. Incompetent is one word, or
bigot.
Say a bigot, and you could say something like that. I was gonna say dickhole.
I think that's an accurate.
That was I'm gonna argue that if you put someone on the stand knowing very well that they are in fact lying directly to you, and it's being used as a talking point throughout the framing and narrative game, which is the reason why you put out this information. I'm sorry I can't be as reasonable as my colleagues here on TWiB Prime are. I think you're being a dickhole, and I hope you fall down. And the fact is that you should be, in all honesty, you should lose your job. This was a complete farce of justice, because in the end, all we wanted was to go to trial, right? To have the conversation. What exactly happened here? And that we never got, and we might never get it. And the fact is, the system that has been built around this to create this space, it's not built for us. And we're seeing that. And hopefully in the future, we will be able to see things change. Hopefully we'll be able to see things implemented that will actually be able to stop the next Michael Brown shooting, or at least be able to hold accountable the next Darren Wilson. But until the actual rules are changed, there's not a lot we can do, and that's why when everyone keeps talking about, when people come at us and they get mad at the protesters and they say, let justice happen, let the cops and the courts decide. It's really?
Right. Well, that's exactly what everyone was clamoring for, is an opportunity to let the courts decide. And we were denied that opportunity by a prosecutor who never planned to indict him in the first place, and by a governor who apparently is so, feckless, that he refused to tell McCullough to step aside and appoint a special prosecutor. There's a very small chance there's one circuit judge who could impanel a grand jury, but I mean, it's unlikely that that's going to happen. So
yeah,
so the movement lives.
Well, the movement was going to live whether or not the DOJ decided to do something with this or not. The big thing that I would like to, I think we were just hoping the idea when. This basically let folks have the capability of throwing middle fingers up and saying, when I'm out there and I'm going to continue processing, I'm doing this, is because I realize that things are not built for me. It's not built for us. It's not going to work the way you claim. It's like a system. It's like a mathematical problem that everyone they think justice is mathematical. That if you put if A happens, then B happens, then C happens, and it's always going to be that way. And C is equals justice. If A happens, i.e., information is put forward, and police officers look into it. B, there is some sort of investigation. Everything happens. C, justice. It will all equal justice, and that's not how any of this works. Mainly for people of color in this country, justice is not mathematical. Justice is not formulaic, and it really isn't when you want to throw all these other different aspects into the situation, like a prosecutor who doesn't really care about convicting cops and actually almost could never bring any indicting cops, and almost has never indicted a cop until it was a black guy who hit a white person down in St. Louis, because that happened. So that's what we're looking at, and that's why people are hurt, frustrated, and if you look in certain spaces, I wish I was seeing more conversation around this online, but people are upset, but people expected it. The worst part about it is that people were told on a regular basis, hey, just trust, man, and then in the end, trust what? You can't trust. Who we trusting?
Ain't nobody to trust, son.
Ain't nobody to trust. All right, Imani, what else is on our docket?
Okay, we have the GOP response to President Obama's State of the Union address last night. Joni Ernst, who's the newly minted senator from Iowa, gave a very folksy response. I have to say there was a lot of mockery going on, and I didn't watch it last night because I can't, I just couldn't. But I did watch it today.
Well, I believe we have the clip of her folksy response, the thing that everyone kind of got froggy about the bread bags
or
whatever.
Shoes, yeah.
Let's see that clip.
As a young girl, I plowed the fields of our family farm. I worked construction with my dad. To save for college, I worked the morning biscuit line at Hardee's. We were raised to live simply, not to waste. It was a lesson my mother taught me every rainy morning. You see, growing up, I had only one good pair of shoes. So on rainy school days, my mom would slip plastic bread bags over them to keep them dry. But I was never embarrassed, because the school bus would be filled with rows and rows of young Iowans with bread bags slipped over their feet.
So that was the quote
folksy.
That it was very folksy. Yeah. Not to be funny, if let's be honest about this, almost all politicians do a similar thing. If not just, it's not even. I would argue that's not even quite folksy as the idea is, and it's framing a narrative 101, right?
It's like, I'm one of you. This is what my life was
like. I'm going to paint a picture to show you, to connect with you about these this particular situations and ideas. So I'm going to use this thing. So I saw some jokes about it, but I didn't understand what was happening. And then Imani flat out said that she found it problematic because she thinks this is like what makes people talk about liberals in that way.
Yeah, I saw a lot of the immediately there were jokes on Twitter about the bread bags, and I just and I saw people posting pictures of their feet like in actual loaves of bread, and so I didn't really understand the context until I watched her response this morning, and I kind of feel like it's mock-worthy, it's kind of silly, but I feel like it sort of plays into this narrative of liberal elites being sort of haughty and privileged and sort of looking down on these red staters. Needless to say, as Elon pointed out when I pointed this out to him, if the tables were turned, Republicans would be mocking their faces off, and that's absolutely true. But I didn't really see anything that was really so hilarious in this particular anecdote that it warranted like all of the mockery on Twitter, because it's kind of like she grew up poor. A lot of Iowans grew up poor. She was just sort of expressing, talking about her modest upbringing, how she got from point A to point B, and that's sort of like, I find that to be acceptable.
Well, here's the thing. It's not just that. It's not like she told this story and like we need to work on economic recovery, blah, blah, blah. She told this story, right? But then she happened to follow up this story with more commentary that is, I think, what kind of highlighted it for a lot of people, why they were confused. We have a second clip from that same response. Let's have that.
We'll also keep fighting to repeal and replace a health care law that's hurt so many hardworking families. We'll work to correct executive...
Right here is I feel like it was a combination, like, and we, as we've noticed, Aaron, and correct me if I'm wrong, when people are making these speeches or conversations, what ends up happening is, if you are not on my side of the political spectrum, I will then mock you about this thing. So, like, she made a comment about being poor and wearing the bread bags, or whatever. People are going ham. Had a Democrat done the same thing, Republicans would have been like bread bags all over the place. And so it's part of that thing about when someone is not on your side, almost everything they do is problematic. And so she had that story, and so you might have, if she was a Democrat, I feel like people might not have jumped on it. Well, at least liberals wouldn't. But it's the same idea, like, of that framing. Did you hear, like, how do you call Obamacare a failed policy and that it's hurting so many people when literally, like, Obama dropped that Obamacare stat like a boss? Right. He was like, all these people's insurance. We are at a record low of uninsured people in America right now. Yep. How do you describe that as hurting America? Especially
hurting middle class, which is what she was trying to, align herself with when she told that story.
Right.
The whole Obamacare is hurting the middle class is just nonsense. It's just flat out untrue. But my point is that I think people are very quick to mock whatever the response is. I thought her response on average wasn't that bad. She spoke extremely slowly and nearly put me to sleep.
Well, then that's bad.
But I can see that she probably appealed to the people that she was trying to appeal to.
No.
Old Republicans who need stuff spelled out to them a little bit slowly. People who still think that Obamacare is the worst thing since Black people. And,
I push back on that. I feel as if I feel like you can make the argument that she actually didn't do that well. She delivered her speech. She did not actually have a flat out breakdown and with the reacher for the water and all that other stuff. Mm-hmm. She didn't have like blatant issues like that. But at the same time, it was a very robotic delivery. Mm-hmm. It was not very personable. No. She told a story, and I'm looking in the chat room on the video stream. Someone called her a Stepford wife, like the idea, like, it looks like she was kind of programmed and like I'm going to read this thing. And so if you're talking about like connecting and having people like feel as if you're talking to them directly and not giving them a political spiel, I would argue that was where she would fail. Like, I'm not giving her a hard time.
But I feel like if you were a Republican, you wouldn't think that.
I mean,
I feel like Republicans are probably like, you go,
Republicans,
girl.
Like, exactly what you just said. Like, as long as you agree with everything she said, you won't really beef with her that much.
Yeah.
But what if you don't? What if you are that ever elusive middle that people that people keep talking about that might not actually exist? What if you're actually in this space? You might why are you talking to me like that? Why are you?
Well, if you're part of that middle, you're not going to like Joni Ernst anyway because she's a Tea Party Republican.
Yeah, I mean, so she's flat out a Tea Party Republican.
Yeah, she's a Tea Party.
So they decided,
and they gave. I don't know how many rebuttals they had. Ted Cruz did one. Joni Ernst did one. I mean, they've got their party is so split up that they have to have like 5 or 6 rebuttals in order to cover all of the individual little factions within their party. I think it's a little bit bizarre, but
At this point, I mean, the best. It's so hilarious because like we progressives and liberals and Democrats are just even by me describing it that way are always kind of like looked at as being the splintered space. But we don't normally go throw out 15 different responses. But ever since Republicans have decided that they're mad at the Republican elite, but then the Tea Party and then the people who are just, I'm a Republican, but I don't want to. I find you banker folks a problem, and I find you Tea Party is a problem, so I'm over here. So like they have an equal a split party, just like, I mean, in all honesty, Republicans should look at Republicans in the same way that we look at Democrats, or as any group of at all, that there's a bunch of different factors and factions and all that, but at the same time, it's kind of funny. It's kind of funny when they're doing all this stuff. You just kind of go like, keep going, keep going. That's why it's hilarious when the president drops a hot 16. By the way, that tweet that yesterday during the State of the Union coverage, we were talking about some of the reactions to the president's speech, and I actually dropped. Apparently, I got one of my tweets got retweeted by Rihanna, and that tweet is somewhere like around 13 or 14,000 retweets at this point, and apparently that that particular moment is the moment from the State of the Union. Like they said, it was the most social moment of the entire thing because it was the the moment that probably will solidify Obama's space as quote unquote black president because Obama literally punchline. Really? Like, and someone tried, and the thing is that I didn't understand that he actually was responding to a heckle, that someone was heckling him.
It wasn't someone, it was all of the Republicans, because what he said was, he's like, I have no more campaigns to run, and the Republicans were like, yeah! And then he goes, because I won all of them. I mean, I really think that was just like, oh, really? You're going to shade me? Let me shade you back. And then all of the Republicans have been whining about it all morning.
Don't get froggy.
Like,
don't get froggy.
Yeah, you know, don't start none, won't be none.
Yeah, exactly. Don't get froggy. You don't want the president to shoot back? Don't fire at the president.
Exactly.
And the thing is that, like, I'm wondering how many of those has he just sat on and just kind of like,
right,
over the years.
Right.
And this time he was like, he was probably in the moment. It's probably one of those Skip Gates moments where the police acted stupidly. He's probably just like, because I want them all. It's probably some stuff that he talks to with Michelle in the back end, or like they're talking about their friends or whatever, and he's just talking all that smack, and he just had that moment live on national television, and we were like, oh snap, most social moment, and the president. Like there are 18,000 different memes going on, but yes, apparently that tweet, like that's actually been posted in a bunch of different wrap-ups of the coverage of the State of the Union. So that's it's hilarious a bit. So what else we got, madam?
So this country, I'm sure you are shocked to know, is too quick to see black children as criminals.
I don't know what you're talking about. Black children are balls of sunshine and happiness, and every time a black child is born, Republicans just hold up the child over a mountain cliff like the Lion King.
So Terrell Starr has a really great piece in Alternet where he talks about the ways in which black children are criminalized at a really young age, and he writes that of the 2,500 kids serving life without parole for crimes committed under the age of 18 in America, 60% of those kids are black. Florida leads the nation when it comes to charging kids as adults. And there is a direct file statute in Florida that allows prosecutors to transfer juvenile cases straight to the criminal court without input from a judge. So more than 50% of the children that are transferred from juvie to criminal court are black. 24% of them are white. The other 26%, I suppose there's some mixture of Asian, Latina, Native, and what have you. But 50%. And now when you talk about prosecutorial bias, you're looking at a black kid who stole something. You're looking at a white kid who stole. Okay, I guess you don't go to life on parole for stealing. So you look at a black kid who killed someone and a white kid who killed someone. The black kid's definitely going to get tried as an adult. The white kid, maybe not so much. And in fact, we've covered stories where the white kids will get off because their parents are super rich.
Yeah, I mean, well, duh.
That one story last year about the kid who, what was it called? The term when you're too rich to know better?
Affluenza.
Affluenza.
That's it.
Yep. So, I mean, so apparently there's a 2014 study called The Essence of Innocence, The Consequences of Dehumanizing Black Children, which demonstrates that white people consistently view black children as less innocent than white children. And here's a quote. Children in most societies are considered to be in a distinct group with characteristics such as innocence and the need for protection. Our research found that black boys can be seen as responsible for their actions at an age when white boys still benefit from the assumption that children are essentially innocent. And I think we see that play out when it comes to media coverage of things like the Mike Brown shooting, where you're talking about, or Tamir Rice, for example. Tamir Rice is actually an even better example, where the cops who shot Tamir Rice thought he was 18 years old. So black kids are perceived to be adults even when they're 12 years old. But white people, when they're like 30, for example, remember we talked about that 30-year-old kid from Princeton who shot his father in the head because his father cut off his allowance? One of the media reports called him a kid. He's 30, but he's white and he killed someone. He's a kid. I think that's, well,
what do you think?
I was going to say fucked up. A little bit fucked up.
We're supposed to be reasonable.
I think that is unjust, unfair, and inhumane. How about that? Shorter. It's fucked up.
I agree, and I believe I want to clear. Like they called him a kid, but that was actually someone who was watching it, which is like kind of the point. The idea that like when people see something and they see someone of color and they see someone white do the same thing, of how it's looked at completely differently. Just like if someone of color is trying to get their bike, and if someone who is white trying to get a bike, like messing with the lock, the person of color is looked at as they're stealing the bike, as opposed to maybe they lost their key or something like that. Same thing about going inside your house. It's problematic, and the best part about it is that it's internalized. This is also internalized by people of color as well. We end up having these same type of issues, and we start to then judge people. You heard a lot about this during the George Zimmerman trial after the murder of Trayvon Martin, where a lot of black folks were telling other black folks, maybe you shouldn't be wearing hoodies. Right. Maybe you should. What are you doing with that? And we've actually internalized this idea that that black skin automatically criminalizes someone, and it's problematic. And so, like on one hand, yes, it's obviously it's an aspect of white supremacy, and we have to also always remember that black people can uphold white supremacy, and you have to kind of call it out in all these angles, in all these spaces, and acknowledge that this is something that's happening. This is an American problem. I mean, this is a problem that is a very, very a part of the American thought process, and we have to constantly point it out. Like, you do realize that if black folks did it, it's looked at wrong. It's not about race. Why do you have to bring color into it? I wouldn't have to bring color into it if America didn't bring color into it 400 years ago.
Word.
Like, I mean, real talk. Like, do you really think I want to have to point out? Do you really think I want to be actually worried because I'm stopped by the police officer at some point? Like when a cop stops me in a car with my wife, and my wife is white. My wife is like, "Oh, can I help you?" And I at that point start to actually shake a little bit. I'm like, "Oh my god, oh my god," because like it's not even the fact that I'm sitting in the passenger seat, because we know that they don't really care if you're sitting in the passenger seat. You can still get it. Like you can get tased. You can get all type pulled out, dragged out the car, shot. Anything could possibly happen. And so it's not so much that we want to pull race into these situations. It's that it's just always there. And this is a prime example when you look at a story like this, where it's like, oh, you know, black kids, that's kind of more guilty, right? Mm-hmm. Just in general, yeah. It's just like why can I live in a world where I'm not automatically more guilty for something? Where I'm not automatically more scary, when my voice is not actually louder just on the basis of of the pigment of my skin.
Yeah, and I really want to drive home the point that the media is really complicit in this. I mean, if you think about those two teenage kids who went on that crime spree, all the media reports refer to them as teenage sweethearts, and they have these pictures of them smiling like they went on a week-long crime spree. But, you know, they're not going to be called thugs, but let a black person get pinched for stealing a Swisher, and they're thugs, thug life.
Well, no, and so I want to well, is it so much that the media will call them thugs per se, or will the people that the media will go to look for? Because like the news story will not say thug killed so and so, right? But what will happen is they'll have conversations around this, much like how Mr. Obama last night was talking specifically around this, saying how like shouting past each other on cable news channels and stuff like that. They'll bring on people who then call out and call them thugs, and then and quote them as that, and then they're like, what? I mean, what do you want? But these kids, Bonnie and Clyde, it's because it's interesting. It's sexy. We can frame this, where the other thing you like kind of just like put down like, and they did this thing and they kill people, and then they'll frame the victims to seem as if they're even more victims under normal circumstances with people of color, but then with white folks it's just like, oh, it's just a thing and they did this stuff, and it's kind of weird. And then like, but we have Johnny Mnemonic over here to weigh in on it. He's a thug.
Johnny Mnemonic.
What? Is that weird? I don't even know how old of a reference is that. Johnny Mnemonic.
Pretty old.
That's like
90.
Actually, more than 20 years old. Hold on.
That's 20 years old. Yeah. Like, I swear to God, like that's how I realize I'm getting old, because just like my random references, I'm just like, yeah, because you know what Rose used to say to Blanche.
1995, sir.
1995. Jeez.
Yeah, 20 years exactly.
Oh my God. You know, listen, back on Magnum PI.
Oh, Magnum PI.
I'm not that old.
I'm not old.
Yeah, you got a little extra time on me, lady.
Got a couple years on you.
All right, what else we got?
What else do we have? So actually, I'm gonna make sure that I'm getting this right, because I don't want to screw up the. We have a
Really, Imani?
No, I had it written down. Damn it! The homeless man got set on fire.
Oh my God! First of all, you should not yell that out like you should win something.
The homeless man got set set on
like
fire.
that is horrible. Like that's a really bad. Like that's not how you.
Actually, it's not a homeless man who got set on fire. It was a cop was throwing a man from his wheelchair onto the ground.
Oh my God. You're yelling both of these things as if like you're winning prizes. Like these are both terrible stories, and Imani's just like, this thing got crazy, right?
Yeah. So a video clip that was uploaded to Facebook shows an officer attempting to throw a man from his wheelchair into the street until someone intervened. The man's name, Devon Freeman, is quadriplegic, paralyzed from the neck down after an accident a couple of years ago. He has barely enough movement in one arm to control the wheelchair. According to his cousin, who was a witness to the event, the police knew this. And here's a quote from the witness. This witness.
I think we actually have footage.
Do we?
I believe we have footage of this.
Roll the tape.
Okay, calm down.
Sorry.
Calm down.
I like being able to say that now.
Bo, don't go over there, Bo. Bo. This nigga Bolo. Hey, Bo.
And so the cops are pulling on the guy in the wheelchair, pulling his wheelchair back and forth. They're having a bit of a now back and forth with the man inside the wheel in the wheelchair. And obviously you can hear people are yelling for him to watch out for what's happening with the cops.
Hey! Bruh! Hey, hold on, bruh!
Oh my God.
Hey, bruh!
I know. I'm not get out of here. I'm trying to leave. We're trying to talk to you. What else up? Grab my fucking foot over. You need to listen, right? Hey.
Come on, Bubba.
You fucking ran my foot over.
Come on, Bo.
So wait, is the cop upset that his foot got run over with the whatchamacallit?
Yeah, apparently he says he just ran
my foot over because as you're using the control motor on your wheelchair, you probably have like a crystal clear, and precise movement with that, right, as if it were some sort of Mercedes-Benz or sports car. So right, obviously you can make sure that never happens. Like,
right,
really?
And the whole thing is that he was trying. There was this congregation of cops. And this man had to wheel himself past these cops in order to get into his house because his house is 5 doors up. So he's wheeling himself through this congregation of cops. Surely he did not intend to run over the cop's foot. But if you see a person in a wheelchair trying to get up the street, maybe you move and make some space for him.
Well, why would you do that? You're a cop.
That's what we're talking. I mean, that's what happens with a lot of black people all the time. I mean, who was it that told a story? It wasn't Jamila, but someone was telling a story about how they were at the gym. It was Olivia Cole. She's a writer for Huffington Post. She's white. She was at the gym with a black friend of hers. And so she was there, and there was a white woman at the gym who decided to go and try and grab a barbell over her black friend who was doing sit-ups. Like, grabbed the barbell and lifted it over her.
Oh, no.
And this woman, Olivia, was like, "What are you doing? My friend's right there. That's really dangerous." And she goes, "Oh, sorry, I didn't even see her." And didn't apologize. I mean, and that's sort of how black people are sort of rendered invisible in public spaces, but we're also very visible. So it's this kind of weird paradox where when it comes to crimes, we're hyper visible. But when it comes to just trying to make our way down the street, when white people are trying to walk and like elbow us in, or we're at the gym and they're pulling up barbells and practically throwing them on our heads.
See, no, I'm going to argue that that's not what this particular situation doesn't look like that to me. I believe that there are various times where we are in fact invisible, or we're not worth the time or the energy, or maybe to actually even engage with us, to ask us to move over or something like that. I can't tell you how many times I've been in a situation and white folks will actually like literally slide by my entire body, like as opposed to just saying excuse me or something like that, like rub their body against me specifically so that, as opposed to just saying, excuse me, and it drives me nuts. Just say, excuse me, I'm more than happy to let you ride. I wasn't going to tell you, I wasn't going to stand here like, what? You asked me to move? Why don't you, like, do you got my reparations? Maybe if you have my reparations, maybe I might consider moving right now in this bread aisle. Like, cause I'm not like, this is where it's happening. Like, it'll happen like ridiculous places like Whole Foods or like Berkeley Bowl or something like that, where it's just like, you could just ask me. Do you really think that I'm in here for some sort of interaction or altercation with you right now as I'm sitting here looking at the goddamn quinoa? I'm pretty sure I'm not. And then, so that's one thing. But I'm looking at this particular situation. Cops are hyper sensitive about their space in general, and part of it, it's argued most times that it's like, well, it's about safety. They have to maintain safety. They're dealing with a situation, and so that happens. But at that point, if you're even anywhere near a cop situation where cops are dealing with someone else, they don't look at you any longer as still a citizen of America or like someone that they should actually be respectful of. They look at you as an impediment to the thing that they're currently doing, whether it is good or bad, whether or not we've seen cops that are doing completely unlawful things, and if someone says, excuse me, sir, you're doing that, and the cop freaks out and attacks them, and maybe they can get arrested. So we've seen that actually happen. But in this situation, his friends were even aware because they saw the cops doing stuff, and they saw him going towards it, and they knew the cops, like, we're terrified at this point. Like, if the cops are doing any type of action, like you get too close, everyone's worried. Like when we were down in Ferguson one night, we weren't even it wasn't even like when the cops were actively firing the tear gas at folks. There was just a line of cops, and I was pretty close to the line of cops, and Aaron was losing his marbles because he was like, we have to get away. That we don't know what they'll do.
Yeah. They were very. Like I said, they seemed like they were just they seemed very. I treat the cops like a gang. I always have. So they had been shown up the day before, and I just trust them to be ready for action the next day, and they were rather soon afterwards.
Right, and so you see a situation with cops around, and then so people are just worried. And I think in this situation, cops just decide that you are no longer actually of note, of worth to them in their situation. Anyone else that is around them at that moment are actually impeding them from doing their thing. Even if you're just too close, even if you have a camera on, even if you ask them questions, you are now a part of the problem, and you are now an enemy of the gang. And so they will deal with you whether or not you are in a wheelchair or not. And what's happening is that we're just seeing this type of stuff has happened all the time. Like, that's what we have to be really clear on. This is not new. This is not a new epidemic. It's not like cops all of a sudden just started getting froggy. Cops have been froggy, all right?
But now it's on video.
And except now, a lot of folks have cameras that, like, you saw that little camera phone. I mean, he was holding it up, what is it? Not like landscape. It was portrait. He was holding portrait, and no country for portrait unless specifically you're trying to show someone's outfit, like I did yesterday with Imani. But the fact is that he had that camera up, and he was like, oh, word? And then actually he did the zoom feature in it to, like, zoom in on it. Like, we live in a different world. So you can't just go around doing the same froggy ish that you've been doing all this time. And I mean, I don't get why cops would think that was reasonable. And the fact that you saw the reaction, you saw the camera start moving because everyone starts running towards the person in a wheelchair that's being kicked off the wheelchair. He's like, he rolled over my foot. That's a reason?
Yeah.
That's the reason. So dude runs on my foot with a wheelchair. Even if I'm mad, even if I think he did it on purpose.
Throw him in the street. That's the only reasonable solution. Just tip him over, throw him in the street. Quadriplegic doesn't matter. You could have. I mean, if the cops really wanted to show him and prove that something's wrong, give him a ticket. Write him up if that was the case. Yeah, but a ticket, why do you have to send them the right message? Throw him in the street. See, yeah, no, that's like so he wasn't a danger to you. You didn't think he had a gun or a weapon. You just wanted to basically hurt the guy. You just wanted to embarrass him and throw him to the street. Like, there was no good reason for this. And you wonder why we have the situations with the cops that we have right now. It's because of ish like this. What else do we have, Imani? And actually, how much time do we have left? Okay, do you have something that we can do quickly? Because I don't believe we should probably do the homeless man because you have actually the homeless man that got hurt. We'll do that tomorrow. But do we have anything else small? Well, we can do really quickly because I talked about this a little bit last week. But President Obama had released a press release. That's released a press release. put out a press release that says that he's essentially going to veto the 20-week abortion ban bill that Representative Trent Frank and Marsha Blackburn have introduced. This is a ban. This is a bill that they introduce year after year. It would ban abortion after 20 weeks, which is usually well past the point at which most people get abortions. I think something like 99% of abortions happen well before 20 weeks. Usually at 20 weeks, it's because there's some sort of fetal anomaly that would make it impossible for the child to survive outside of the womb. But what's really interesting, we expected President Obama to veto this, and in fact, the Democrats may filibuster it. But what is interesting, this new development in this story, is that 2 congresswomen have withdrawn their support for the bill. It's Congresswoman Renee Elmers from North Carolina and Jackie Walorski from Indiana. They have asked to be removed as co-sponsors of the legislation, not because they think that a woman has a right to choose and that the 20-week abortion ban is unconstitutional, which it most assuredly is, but because they think that focusing on abortion this quickly out of the gate is going to turn off millennials and young voters. So if you're interested, I will tweet out a link to the actual bill text so you can read it. But essentially, I'll run this down for you again. Roe v. Wade says that women have a constitutional right to an abortion up to the point of fetal viability. The medical consensus is that fetal viability occurs at about 24 weeks. So a 20-week abortion ban is flat out unconstitutional.
Right.
They have still been enacted in 14 states. Of those 14 states, 3 of them are currently blocked. And the only one that has been blocked by a higher court is Arizona's. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal 2 years ago ruled that particular ban was unconstitutional. So essentially what we're waiting for is another circuit court of appeal, probably the Fifth Circuit, which is where Texas sits, to say that the 20-week abortion ban is constitutional, and then it'll head up to the Supreme Court.
That's a lot for a minute and a half.
You gave me a minute and a half, and I gave you a minute and a half, and I gave you a minute.
You went by the minute and a half. But okay, folks, we are out of time. We'll be back here tomorrow. Same black time, same black channel. Aaron, have we been sufficiently black?
Yes, we have, sir.
Ms. Gandy, have we been sufficiently black?
So black, I don't even know what to do with myself.
Thank you guys for listening. We'll be back here tomorrow. Have a pleasant evening.
Whenever you hear these horns, just know you are now entering the blackness. Collard greens, cornbread, and the catfish. Malcolm X and Dr. King with a black fist. We are live, son. This is blackness. You are now entering the blackness. Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye, and the classics. Real love, the opposite of ratchet. We are live, son. This is blackness.